and welcome to Infertility Unfiltered, where fertility experts and warriors are joining forces to provide you with tips, inspiration, information, and all of the things so that you can take back control of your life and get your baby on board. Hi, I'm Jennifer Robertson, and today we are very blessed to be joined by Charlotte Grand. Now, Charlotte is a qualified and registered nutritional therapist and creator of the Fertility Kitchen, which I love. She's on Instagram. Make sure you follow her. It's an awesome page, lots of great recipes. Charlotte has personal experience in infertility herself, which she'll talk about, and takes a functional approach to fertility and preconception care. This means that she seeks to identify and address the underlying causes of your health and fertility issues and look beyond your reproductive system for answers. Now today, among other things, she's going to be telling us her top tips for selecting fertility-friendly foods and recipes. And if you stick around to the end, Charlotte is going to tell you how you can get your hands on her free Eat a Rainbow chart, which sounds amazing. So thank you so much for joining us, Charlotte Grand.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today.
It's a pleasure. Now, before we get started on food, top tips for fertility, I would love for you to tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got into this field.
Okay, so it all started, as a lot of our stories do, with my own experience of infertility. So it's going back a few years now, but back in 2007, I got married to my long-term boyfriend, and we started trying for a baby in 2008 when I was 26. And we were really surprised that nothing happened. So we had been trying for a few months, and I was really shocked because I had a textbook cycle, 28 days, definitely ovulated day 14. I had really clear signs of ovulation. So we headed off to our GP, and we had the kind of usual hormone tests that they give out over here. We had a semen analysis. All of that was fine. So we got referred to the fertility clinic, and I went and had a laparoscopy and hysteroscopy. And my tubes were fine, so they checked my tubes, checked my womb and everything, all fine. So we were eventually diagnosed with unexplained infertility and referred for IVF. So that was a massive shock for me at the time because I really wasn't expecting it. I wasn't in the fertility field. I didn't really know much about it all, and IVF was the last thing that I thought we would try. So I really thought that we'd be offered some like IUI maybe or something else first, but no, that was the kind of the answer for unexplained infertility. So, and also at the time in the UK you can get NHS funding, but because I was 29 by that point, so it'd been 3 years that we'd been trying, we weren't yet eligible because you had to be 30 at the time in the UK, which they've changed now, but there was no way. I mean, I wasn't long 29 either, and they just wanted me to wait another 6 months, and that, you know, when you've been trying to conceive for 3 years, another 6 months, just, you don't want to do that, do you?
It feels like forever.
It's forever. So, and you know, 6 months on the roller coaster every month of symptom spotting and all of that jazz. So no, so we were fortunate enough to be able to go privately, so we did that. And again, I was pretty green about IVF at the time, so I didn't really know too much about it. I did a bit of reading, started to try and support myself through diet, but I wasn't that into diet at the time. So I did a few things, and the main thing I did actually was have acupuncture, and that really helped me. So I was very fortunate enough to conceive on our first IVF cycle, and we have a son called George, who's now 8. And then the journey to our second, so we kind of knew that we wanted to start trying again pretty quickly after having George, just because we knew it could take a long time, and we did want a sibling. So when he was about 9 months old, we started trying for a second baby, and from our first cycle we had a frozen embryo in the freezer, so we kind of had that to fall back on, but I still wanted to conceive naturally, so we gave that a go for about a year, and nothing happened. So we went and had a frozen transfer. And looking back, it probably wasn't the best time for me to do that because I was pretty stressed at the time, and also I was still breastfeeding George. So in terms of your hormone levels, it's not ideal, and I had a natural frozen transfer. So I've got no doubt really that my hormones weren't playing ball. So that cycle was unsuccessful. So then we went and we decided to go straight for another fresh round of IVF. And again, I had a pretty good experience of IVF. I mean, I kind of sailed through it, and between having George and going through the next cycle, I'd got a bit more into diet. So I was really supporting myself. And I got pregnant on the fresh cycle. But sadly, I had a chemical pregnancy. So I think I had the positive test on the Saturday, and then, I don't know, I had an inkling that something wasn't quite right. And a couple of days later, I thought, I'm just going to take another test. And when I did that test, it was negative. And then shortly afterwards, I started bleeding. So that was pretty crap. It was quite a low point on the journey. But obviously, you pick yourself up and you crack on. So and actually it was really sad, but when I had gone through that fresh cycle, I had loads of embryos, maybe like 15 embryos, something like that, and they cultured them to day 6 and decided that they weren't good enough, so they didn't freeze any of them, so they discarded all of them. So having gone through that, I knew that I'd had to go through the whole thing again. So that was really hard. But we waited 3 months and decided that we would go again. So we went again for another fresh cycle, and very luckily I got pregnant with my son Alex, who's now 4. No, he's now 5. So yeah, it's a long journey to conceive, lots of IVF, and looking back now, it was a long time ago, so you can kind of gloss over it a bit, but I remember it just being really hard. Really hard.
Absolutely. And so that is what led you into nutrition, and more specifically around fertility. Like, tell me how the Fertility Kitchen came to be.
Of course. So it really came about because of my journey, but I kind of went into another area first. So I made a lot of changes along the way, just throughout having my children and just between IVFs and things. And I also had acupuncture. So I had acupuncture to support me when I was trying to conceive. And at the time, I'd really gone to help with the stress, because obviously infertility is really stressful. But I also had a really stressful job. I was a fashion buyer, so I was working long hours and I had a lot on my plate from that point of view. So I went and had acupuncture. And actually, the only thing I did have wrong with my periods at the time was quite painful periods. And the next period I had after maybe having 3 sessions of acupuncture was completely pain-free. And for me, that was just so profound, given that I suffered for many years being, doubled up in pain every month, having to take Nurofen and paracetamol and things like that just to get through my period. So that was like a bit of a aha moment, like, this is crazy.
And that's the thing, we think that painful periods are normal, and we're all just finding out now that no, it is not. It's absolutely not.
Exactly. It's a sign that something's not quite right and that your body's not quite happy. So that experience of having the pain to no pain was incredible. And I started to read about acupuncture, and my acupuncturist lent me some books and stuff, and I really got into the theory of it. And my acupuncturist suggested, oh, why don't you come along to the college? Because where I worked at the time, the college was just around the corner. And I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. I'll just go along and see what it's all about. So I went to an open evening, and really just really interested me, piqued my interest. So I thought, I'll just sign up. But it was a degree, and it was like a weekend degree. So I went for it, signed up, joined the course, and then started to study acupuncture alongside working in my job. So it was quite intense. And then during that time, went through IVF and also had George. So it was quite an intense few years. But when I qualified, I knew from the beginning that I wanted to support women. So everything I did on my acupuncture degree was really geared towards when I finished, to be able to set up a fertility acupuncture clinic. So that's what I did. And then naturally, just the acupuncture led me to start exploring other aspects of health and well-being, and I started to get really into diet. And between having George and Alex, I read a book about sugar, and I did Sarah Wilson's I Quit Sugar program. So I completely ditched sugar, felt really good. And that was really the start of then getting into nutrition. So then after having Alex, I think I was experimenting and exploring things, and I decided to cut out dairy just to see if it would have an impact on my asthma and my eczema. And it did. It just completely, my asthma vanished, basically. So that was my real defining moment of the healing power of food. And that led me to head back to college to then study nutrition as well. So I did a 3-year science-based nutrition diploma. And it is then along the way, I started to think about how I could, or what I needed on my journey that wasn't available. Because when I started researching fertility nutrition, yes, there were books available that told me, oh, you need these nutrients, but there was nothing that then translated that into practical advice. Like, how do you actually get that into your diet? And I started to think to myself, well, what would really have benefited me on my journey? And it was the early hours of one morning when I was half awake and I was lying in bed, pondering everything as you do. And the Fertility Kitchen just popped into my head in a light bulb moment. And I just thought, right, okay, that's a really good name. And that's a really good way to support people, just, to give them that practical, down-to-earth advice. So I immediately registered all the names on Instagram and Facebook and the website and everything. And that was it, really. That was the Fertility Kitchen, kind of the birth of the Fertility Kitchen, if you like. And it really is just providing everything that I wanted on my journey, that I felt there was a gap, because I really feel like there's a massive lack of resources when you're trying to conceive. I mean, it's getting better for sure, but when I was going through it, there was hardly anything. I mean, Instagram didn't exist, and obviously now that's a really great source of support and information, but that wasn't around when I was going through it. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so now you provide recipes and advice around foods that support fertility. So can you give us your top tips on fertility foods and how to encompass it in a recipe or meals or planning, so that it is consistent? Because it really is about building a habit around certain foods, and it's not about, pineapple is great for fertility, so we're just going to eat pineapple and we're going to eat nothing else. So it's all about balance, but how do we maintain that, and how do we select?
I think, it's about going back to basics, really, and that's part of my sort of food philosophy. It's really not complicated. I think we really try and overcomplicate things. So I'm a real believer in getting as much of your nutrients as possible from food. So really going back to your diet and just paring back. So, leaning away from all the processed type foods, embracing real foods in their natural state, eating the season. So really getting to know what's in season, knowing your sources as well. So where's your food coming from? How's that been? So if you are eating meat, how's that been raised? What was it diet? Because that will affect the nutrient profile of the meat that you then eat. And fish, like is that wild caught, or has it been farmed? Because again, that will have an impact. So those things are a great foundation where you just really take it back to basics, go with the seasons, know your sources. And then I think there's a few sort of top kind of tips I have that really help you to focus on eating in that way. So my first one is like eating dense. So really what that means is everything you eat is full of as much nutrition as possible. So if you were to compare a plate of pasta, which is mainly carbohydrate, versus a big plate of vegetables, which is the most dense? They might take up the same room in your tummy, but the veggies are going to give you so much more. You're going to get more vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients. So really thinking about the nutrient density of food. Like fish, for example, is one of the most dense foods. Liver as well, which I know has the ick factor, but again, that's known as nature's multivitamin. So it's a really good thing to include in your diet, maybe once a week or once every other week, because it's so dense. So that's a good one. Crowding out is another one. So rather than focusing on restriction, you're focusing on nourishment, and start your plate with vegetables, because our kind of balance of meals has become quite skewed over the years, and we've gone towards making the pasta, the rice, the star of the show. And actually, we need to make the vegetables the star of the show. They really need to sit at the forefront of every plate. So starting with your vegetables and just trying to make them more interesting by using fats. Fats will really help to make your food taste good. So, you know, sauteing in butter or some coconut oil, using herbs and spices and salt and things like that, just to really flavour your food, flavour your veggies, make a nice dressing.
So make them sexy.
Exactly. So focus on veggies first, and then you want to be having a palm-sized participant as your protein. So what protein is that nutrient dense? So going back to that nutrient density, you know, maybe it's a piece of salmon, really quick and easy to cook, really delicious, flavor it up with some herbs and spices. So that's a great way to sort of start building your plate. And then maybe having the grains. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of grains, but if you really like them and you want to keep them in, just making sure that you keep them as you know, a side portion. Basically how most people eat vegetables, as a side. You want to make your grains the side, or starchy carbs, so something like sweet potato or potato, that needs to be a half cup portion, say. And then but not kind of restricting yourself. So my other tip is to go with a sort of 80-20 rule, or an 80-20 approach, and that's all about really focusing on mindful indulgence. So eating as well as you can for 80% of the time, and for 20% of the time allowing yourself to have whatever you fancy, and but making sure that you're not just stuffing it down in front of the TV, that you're actually, okay, I'm going to make myself my favorite cup of tea or my favorite hot drink, and I'm going to sit down with my cookie or my brownie or whatever it is, and I'm going to like eat it and really savor it. And I think that will help you get a more balanced approach to eating, and to focus more on nourishment and not restriction, and then just being kind to yourself. So my final sort of top tip would be progress over perfection. It's one of my favorite mantras, and it's all about taking things slowly. So if your diet needs a complete overhaul, don't try and do it all at once, because it's very overwhelming and you probably won't do it, and then you'll be annoyed with yourself, and you don't need that stress, especially when you're dealing with infertility. So it's all about making one change, maybe even focus on that change for a couple of weeks, and when you've nailed it, then you can move on to the next change. And then over time, that's when you'll start to make huge changes to your overall diet, and that will massively support your fertility. And you know, that's how I did it. I mean, I've always been really slim, and I've always looked super healthy, but my diet is vastly different now to how it was when I was trying to conceive, because I was eating a standard Western diet. I was having cereals for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, pasta for dinner. So very limited veg, lots of carbs, lots of pasta and wheat. And now, you know, I don't eat dairy. I just really focus on veg. I eat a small bit of meat or a small bit of fish, and then maybe a side portion of sweet potato. And I don't really eat sugar, but that's something that's not happened overnight. So it's all about going slowly and being kind to yourself, especially on this journey, because it's so tough.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's understanding how food should make you feel. You know, if you have a meal and then afterwards you're like, I need to have a nap right now, it's probably not the right types of food. Like, your food should actually give you energy to be able to keep on going for the day. And as you know, most of our audience obviously is women. You know, as women, like, we put ourselves through so much. You know, like, we're nurturers, we're carers, we're multitaskers. We do all of these things. Like, we really need to be eating so that we give ourselves the energy to be able to do everything that we want to do, including grow a baby, because it takes a lot of energy to grow a baby.
It absolutely does. And excuse me, and the thing that you need to realize is that your reproduction is your body's last priority. So if you're not getting enough nutrients from food to support your basic functions, when you do start eating that way, firstly, your body's going to prioritize functions that it needs to keep you alive, and the reproductive system might be at the top of your list, but it's going to be at the bottom of your body's list. So again, as well, it's about that consistency and keeping things going over a longer period of time, because often I'll hear people say, oh, I tried diet and it didn't work, and it's like, well, actually you didn't really try it for long enough, and that's the problem. And because we're so used to quick fixes, we all want just to take a magic supplement, and it just doesn't work like that. It does take time, effort, and dedication.
And it is really about changing the habits that we've had or that we've developed over our whole life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Habit breaking is tough. It really is. But there are so many ways to do it. I mean, there's some great resources out there as well. And I don't know if you've come across Atomic Habits, but that's a great book that really gives you lots of strategies. And I'm all about practical advice, so it really helps you to think about how those habits have become ingrained. But like you said earlier, it's so important just to focus on that, how the food makes you feel and how much nutrition you're getting from it, because it is very nutrient intensive to grow a baby. And if you start off as well, even if you do get pregnant and you start off with nutrient deficiencies, by the end of pregnancy, you're going to be so much more deficient, because your baby will take all of your nutrition, all your nutrient stores, it will deplete them. So and then you'll have to deal with a newborn baby, which is really hard work, and you won't necessarily have those reserves to help you to do that. So it's important to nail that diet for a healthy pregnancy, and then just to be able to cope with the demands of a newborn.
Yeah, absolutely. I love all of that. Now, Charlotte, how can we get our hands on your free Eat a Rainbow chart?
Okay, so I think the best thing at the moment is for people to email me if they want it. So my email address is charlotte@thefertilitykitchen.co.uk, and I'll happily send that. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask me, or head over to Instagram as well, and ask me questions on any of my posts. But
Perfect.
yeah, if you want the chart, definitely drop me an email.
Yeah, and I'll put all of the links in the details below as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Charlotte Grand.
You're more than welcome.
And if you like this video as much as I did, make sure that you give it a little bit of love as well. Make sure you share it, like it. Make sure you subscribe to this channel as well, because this is just one of many amazing videos as part of the Infertility Unfiltered series. So thanks for watching.